Good morning. Welcome to today's virtual farm tour. We're really excited today to be presenting the Rocky Creek Dairy from Olin, North Carolina as this noontime virtual farm tour. This event is sponsored by NC Dairy Advantage, which is a not-for-profit that we have in North Carolina that was founded by our dairy farmers as well as members of all the different sectors of the dairy industry in North Carolina. We're trying to work as a group to try to stabilize and grow the North Carolina dairy industry. And I'm Shannon Davidson, and I work at NC State in Dairy Extension, as well as serve as part of the program resource team for NC Dairy Advantage. That's a position I've been working in since 2009, and the organization was formed in 2008. In my role, I am really privileged to get to work with a great group of farmers in North Carolina. And North Carolina is quite a big ag state. I'm sure most of y'all are familiar with us for our hog and poultry populations. And so animal ag is our #1 economic contributor, and dairy does make up a decent portion of that. We have dairy farms all the way from the mountains all the way down into the coastal plain. Our core dairy industry area is the Western Piedmont region, which is actually where Olin is and where Rocky Creek Dairy is located. Our farmers use this diversity of resources and things available to create dairy farms that are successful for their own unique circumstances and their own unique goals. And that makes our industry very diverse. But we're also very fortunate to have dairy farmers that are progressive and very forward-thinking, resourceful, and passionate. And Ben Shelton and this farm family is an excellent representation of those types of farms. Dr. Shelton is also a bovine veterinarian, and his management proves that healthy cows produce lots of high-quality milk, and that is a goal for this herd, and he uses both health and cow comfort to really push his cows forward. He's thoughtful, analytical, kind, they're generous neighbors, and it's an excellent family, and I'm privileged to get to work with this herd. As a matter of course, through the presentation, please go ahead and silence your phone, and we're going to generally try to hold questions to the end, and we do have microphones to pass out. We'll have somebody on either side of the room to help make sure that we get you recorded, because remember, you are being recorded today, so let's get that recorded properly for the presentation. So I want to thank the Shelton family for coming, and I will start off with our short video presentation and then turn it over to Dr. Shelton.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Thank Shannon and Extension and Dairy Herd Advantage for all that they've done to help put all this together. It's a lot of work went to this. I wanted to ask y'all, so are we mostly, if you're Midwestern here, we're mostly Midwestern? If you're Midwestern, would you raise your hand? Okay, many from the South? We got a couple in the back. And then international, we got many international? A little bit international, okay. Okay, well, you know, from the South, I was just trying to decide how fast I need to try to talk, you know. If I need to slow down or speed up or whatever, so we'll see how that goes. I know we say y'all, and everywhere else it's you'uns, you know, in the mountains it's you'uns and y'all, and then you guys, so we'll try to make it work. So just a review of our family, and I think they want all y'all to stand up here. This is our entourage that came with me. Would y'all all stand up? We're going to get everybody introduced here. Okay, so part of the reason they came was because my son Paul here and his wife Mandy and Bill, who's our main guy that really knows what's going on with the cows, and his wife Terry, well, they said, well, if he goes somewhere for two days and he sees all this stuff, he's going to come back and want to change a lot of stuff. So we better go and make sure we know what he's seeing up there, okay, because he's bad about that, okay? So they're here to keep an eye on me, and they're here to answer the questions that I can't answer. So thank them for coming. And then Linda, this is Linda Gates and her husband, Jason. They came. I actually introduced them, and they got married, and they still like each other, and they still like me. So that's working out pretty good, and Linda does a great job. She works with Bart and Kiefer and does our ration work, and thank her for that. Then my wife, Mimi, and so she and I and Paul are the partners in the dairy, and you know, you have to have someone that goes with you to farm credit to help sign those notes, right? And so she can tell you all about that. So we've been very blessed in a lot of ways, and that's good. Unless y'all want to say something else, I think we're good on. We've been blessed in so many ways, and we just have a lot to be thankful for. So. And then Paul and Mandy have two wonderful children now, and we love being grandparents and getting to do that. Savannah keeps us on our toes. When you get one 3.5 years old that's full of energy all the time, you start realizing how old you're starting to get. So we'll go right into it. We started the farm there 26 years ago. I got out of veterinary school and worked in Apex. We had a client that came to me and another fellow and said, hey, I'll rent you the farm, finance the cows, and grow the silage for you. So that's kind of how we got started about 30 or so years ago. We moved here, and we've been fortunate. People have worked with us and kind of allowed us to do what we've done. We do milking 3 times a day. This is our herd average. The 70,000 cell count, we hit back in April, I think our monthly average, we got as low as 64. That was the best month we've ever had. I want to talk a little bit today about some things we've done that I think have helped us get there. Production has been good. Cows have been healthy. We've had an incredibly hard summer. I think we're pushing probably 85 days now over 90 degrees. It's put a little stress on things. Then we had 20 inches of rain from the end of July to the end of August. Then we had 8 inches of rain with the Florence hurricane. And so heat and humidity did not help some things. So today we're about 110 to 120,000 cell count, but probably get that back down when the weather cools off a little bit, if it ever does. I think it was 92 there yesterday. So we'll just talk a little bit about calves, focus on cow comfort, forages, and employee training. And another video. This does sound a little bit like Deliverance, but it's really not. Okay. So just a little bit about the calf barn. This is something we did a little different. We had raised calves and hutches for years, kind of battled the moisture issue under gravel, the weather issues for the people and the calves, and so all the thing came out about going back to group housing, and so we decided, well, we wanted to try something different. We started out in these barns with a cheaper version of automated feeders and weren't really satisfied with the performance there. Then came along Purina and Land O'Lakes with an acidified milk replacer. And so that's what we're doing. And so in the video it showed it's really a box with a 55-gallon barrel. So we make up 50 gallons of the acidified milk replacer in the morning. You saw those tubes. So it's a self-feeding system. The acidification and the temperature that you mix it at kind of limits your intake, so they'll do about 6 to 8 feedings a day. We'll get up to a little over 3 gallons per day when they peak on their intake, and that's putting us weaning calves there at 65 days. It's about 210 to 220 is where they usually come out of there. We feel like that gets us off to a good start, so we've got average age at first calving at 21 months. We started weighing those heifers the other day to kind of an idea about where we are. So when we're moving spring and heifers into the calving barn at 3 weeks before calving, they're 1375 to 1400. It's about where we are on weight with those at 21 months. So we've been really pleased with this. The one thing that we did a little different when we first built these barns, and we went with the standard I think it was 35 square feet per calf, or 30, whatever it was. Whatever the standard was, we built them for that, and we decided that's too many calves for the area. So we're running 12 to a pen. It's a 35 by 100 barn with 4 pens in there. And we did bed all the way down. We bedded the whole thing, and I felt like our biggest issue in these barns is respiratory disease and clean air. And so it seemed like to me that if I could have my concentration of what's going on there and we clean that area out once a week, I feel like I keep my air cleaner than having all this moisture and ammonia under the whole area. And then we've got a picture, I think, coming up of the air tube in the middle. I think it showed in the video. So you're trying to push air through those barns. So the group housing, I think, is one of the better things that's come along for calves. I think aesthetically, it's definitely better than the calf hutches. You know, I was on the plane down here and started talking to the lady, and she said, told her we dairy farm on. She had some negative comment about calf hutches, so I was trying to explain to her that it really wasn't quite what she saw. But I think this probably is a little more pleasing to the public. Talked about the ventilation, and then the chlorine dioxide water treatment is something we've put in just in the last couple of months. You know, we're in the headquarters of the chlorine dioxide guy, Dr. Sockett, over here at the university. We've worked with him quite a bit. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but chlorine dioxide is a water treatment that's really caught on a lot in poultry and swine. When we look at biofilm buildup in our lines, we feel like we're seeing a benefit there. And Ralph Gill, who works with Land O'Lakes, had talked about a lot of this that's going on, and from what he tells me, Ohio and Wisconsin has improved respiratory health, and so that's what we're looking at by adding the chlorine dioxide water treatment to our water lines. Let's see what the next one is. And if you have a question as we're going, like if we had something, I'll back up. If you have anything about this or the calves, feel free to just ask as we go. This is a chart that Shannon put together for us. So we've got a preg rate on the bottom, just a little bit of talking about, even though we're in a pretty hot climate, I think with cow comfort and cooling and the things that we do, we can get performance. So we're running from in the low 40s to right now in the heat of the summer still in the mid-20s on preg rate. I feel like that's good performance for the kind of weather we've had. I have to give Bill Slade, who's here with us, all the credit for that. This is a double live sync program. I think you have to always emphasize with all those programs adherence to protocol to make sure every shot gets given at the right time is the key, and cows are bred at the right time. So that's where we are with repro. With cell count, you see we kind of hit a pretty good stretch there, staying sub 100 by a pretty good bit. Typically we'll go up about 30,000 in the summertime. This summer I think was just a hotter and more humid summer than we've had in a while, and it's definitely the month of September has been a little bit tougher on us than what we've had in the past. Production-wise, we peaked back in the winter at just over 100, and we've held now into the 90s. And so, when you look at variance in production is a big part of our industry. I think especially in the southeast, we would see some herds that would swing as much as 30 or 40% from highs to lows. When we look at asking our co-ops to market our milk, that becomes a very difficult situation to market that kind of fluctuation. So you're asking to make that much change in the market. So I think that's part of what's going on. You see a lot of fall-based plans developed. I know in the southeast, I presume some of that's across the country. Of course, other places may not have quite that much swing. You get down into southern Florida especially, that market has had a tremendous amount of variation that's made marketing milk a bigger challenge. Cow comfort, I think, is the buzzword that's been around now for 20 or 30 years, but I think we're learning more and more about what that really means in terms of how do we cool cows, how do we make them want to eat more, how do we train our people to stress them less. So, I think that's what we're seeing with some of the advantages of the robot herds. Those cows never have to move very fast, and you get a little bit more longevity out of the cow with some of those things. So I guess in Wisconsin, for a lot of y'all are up here, I don't know how many herds are actually using the soakers. These really came in vogue 20 years or so ago, and at first they were considered misters. We realized that we don't want to mist. We really want to get the cow wet and then have the air speed take that moisture away so you truly get the evaporative cooling, so you're making that cow cool down. So a lot of fans. We went with the brushes. Everybody else, did the brushes make you any money? Well, I don't know. My thought is if it's going to get her up, make her move a little more, maybe while she's at that she goes and eats a little more. I think it does make a difference for us in the spring when we're trying to get that long hair off that they have accumulated over the winter, and they've got a place to go rub and get that off. And I don't think there's hardly a time that you go by there that some cow isn't there using the brush. They really do get used a lot. Shade cloth, I think we've got maybe another picture, but we use those a lot in our area. No, I don't have a picture of it, but the shade cloths have made a lot of difference. Even in our freestall design, when we built that barn, our goal was to have enough roof over the side of the barn that we weren't getting that, especially that afternoon sun coming in, but we really didn't get as much as we wanted. And when we put the shades out there, the utilization of those stalls in the afternoon was a lot better, just because it cooled it off and they didn't have that bright light on them. So a lot of stall management and sand management has obviously become a big topic lately. How do we get these stalls clean and dry? How do we get the best use out of the stalls? So one thing we did, we put a PVC pipe in on our curb. This was a few years ago. We just felt like that gave us a little more depth of sand. We try to plow at least once a week. Dr. Reed, I think I saw Dr. Reed outside here a while ago. He was the one that really pushed us to do that. Makes a tremendous difference. You can actually feel how much softer that stall is after you've plowed. You don't really think that sand is packing as much as it is, but the plowing really opens it up. You really do an aeration to try to get more drying of the sand. In our area, and we put the McClanahan cleaner in, which does a really good job of cleaning sand. In a sand lane for us in the summertime, we can get pretty good clean sand because we've got biological activity in the lagoon that's helping break all that organic matter out of the water. But we get to the middle of the winter when all that stops, and you don't really clean sand very good with the sludge that sometimes is getting flushed and you can't get rid of it. So the sand cleaner has been a big deal on getting it clean, but then the next thing is how do you try to get it dry? I know a lot of money's been spent on sand dryers and different things. I think the plowing helps break a little bit of that down. We've tried here lately going in and after we bed, when that sand comes out of the pile and there's still moisture in it, we'll put a heavy dose of hydrated lime in the back just to try to dry that sand. I think that's been a plus. This deal here is we rigged up on the scrape on the Bobcat. It's actually a little pump that we mounted on top of the Bobcat, a little tank with a pump, and we use synergize disinfectant so that when the guy is scraping, we're actually spraying the synergize disinfectant into the sand. Everybody says, well, do you think that really works? Well, I'm not sure totally how much difference it makes. Synergize is a very effective disinfectant, and it's relatively cheap. We spend about $75 a week is what we spend with the Synergize. The thing I've noticed in our herd, and I have a client herd, milks about 1,800, that we tried the same thing. And the thing we've noticed there, though, through our lab that we have through our veterinary service, is that it seemed like our cultures, after we did that for a while on our clinical cows, we hardly ever get gram positives anymore. We primarily get no gross and gram negatives. And so with that, we got to the point that, well, let's just quit treating those clinicals at all. And I think we really have done about the same with not treating clinicals as we did with treating clinicals. When you look at the fact that probably half of them are a no growth or potentially a Pseudomonas or a Prototheca that's not going to respond anyway, and then the coliforms, unless they're severe, they respond just with stripping them out and milking, and so we've cut that cost out, and I think we've done just as well. A little bit back to the PVC pipe. The other thing that does is when your pusher, I know some of you probably have flush barns, we still scrape, but then no matter how much I would tell him that we really don't want to make sure, we want to make sure we don't get any manure rolled up into the back of the stall when he scrapes. Now with that on there, he can't get it up in there, okay? And so even as much as I said that, and I'll tell you this probably later talking about employees, I tell the guys at all of our meetings, I'll say, the studies would say that we only retain 10% of what we hear. You know, so if y'all only retain 10% of what I say today, then it'll just be a little bit, right? So I think they're the same way, and so I said, but for that reason, I tell y'all everything 11 times, okay? And sometimes it takes more times than that. And so it finally got through one time at one of the meetings. The guy raised his hand and he says, Senor, you say the same thing at every meeting. I said, well, that's good. We're getting somewhere now. So I would say about the milk culturing, I think it's so important to know what you got, okay? And we are definitely probably, maybe because we look for it more, maybe because herds are getting larger, sand is being recycled more, it's harder to get it dry. We definitely see more Prototheca, which is, I don't know how familiar you are with it. It's a non-treatable organism. It can be contagious. It's got a lot of challenges, okay? So so the one thing we are going to try, I don't know if I've got, I can't remember which slide is next. No, I'll go back to this. The one thing we are going to try on the sand, and this is a new deal, maybe next year I'll actually know if this works or not, because so this is another thing. Paul's laughing at me again up here. So in the poultry industry, I saw this deal in the poultry houses, and they're using it in some places. When they clean them out, they clean them all the way down to the dirt. And if you want, we couldn't get the video on here. If you go to your YouTube and go to Red Dragon Poultry Sanitizer, okay? Have you seen it, ma'am? No? Red Dragon, okay. It was still pretty funny. Okay. So this mounts behind the tractor. It's LP gas, and it's got these burners that are torching the dirt at 2,000 degrees. And I thought, man, if we could do that on some sand, we could dry it out and probably kill some bugs. So I emailed them and said, hey, y'all ever thought about doing this in dairy? And they said, well, we tried it. You know, we did a little study actually at North Florida Holsteins a few years ago. We thought it had merit, but never went anywhere with it, and we've kind of mothballed it. But we'd love to sell you one. So it's supposed to be at our place here in another week or two, and we're going to have to kind of fabricate it a little bit. It's actually what they had done. It's developed so that it's on a hydraulic arm on the front of your skid steer, would drop right in under your stalls with a rake or a plow right ahead of it, and then you've got this torch, these 3 torches that are going to heat this sand. So that's my goal, is that we'll heat that enough that we're actually taking the moisture out of it, we're killing the bugs in it, and see what kind of difference that makes in terms of controlling disease. They told me in the study they did at North Florida, it was not an issue. It does sound pretty hot to me too, and that was the same question I asked. But they said it will not be an issue. Okay. Let's see. A little bit on the feeding program. Another thing that we've tried this year, we put in subsurface drip irrigation on 70 acres. Are y'all familiar with that term at all? Has anybody seen much of that around? It's actually Israeli technology. The company is Netafilm who developed it. So the first 70 acres is pretty expensive, I'm just going to tell you, because you got, by the time we ran power to the creek and the pumps and the filters and the whole deal, but our goal is hopefully to get up to about 300 acres on this system. But it's actually, it's a little plastic, I call it like a ribbon or a tube that goes underground about 10 to 12 inches, 40 inches apart. We've got another guy in our area started some of this a few years ago, putting 10 to 12 inches of water under the corn crop. Okay, so when you look at a 100-day growing season, on 300 acres, you would use about 100, it's unbelievable how much water it is. About 100 million gallons of water you would put under 300 acres. So we would be up to about 1 million gallons a day. In North Carolina, our permit level is that as long as we're less than 1 million gallons a day, we don't have to get a permit to take it out of the local creek or river. So it just so happens that we got that in this year. The guys putting it in were a little bit late getting us completely finished, so corn was just about tasseling before we actually got water to it. That was a little bit disappointing for what we spent on it, but they're combining it. They started combining it yesterday at our place, and it looks like we're going to be somewhere in the 240, 250 maybe on that 70 acres. Dryland corn there would have probably been, oh my God, that would have been 50 bushels, wouldn't it, Paul? Probably been 50 or 60 bushels, because it was pretty dry. I mean, we kind of target in our area, if most of the guys on dryland corn, if they can do 150 bushel corn, they've done pretty well in our area on a regular year. I said, well, Paul, we probably can't talk about that much up here. They do 180 or 200 just on an average year. But for us to be able to approach 250, that was pretty good. We've gotten pretty involved with cover crops in the last several years. You know, when I was flying in here, I noticed how flat y'all are. I don't think y'all would have to deal with erosion maybe to the level that we would if you're from this area. But still, in terms of soil fertility, improving forages, improving tonnage per acre, I think the cover crops have been a great thing for us. And then the BMR versus conventional, I guess, is an ongoing topic. We've about 4 to 5 years now with BMRs. We really don't feel like we're seeing yield drag. Shannon had told me about some of the research that they'd done at North Carolina, where some years they felt like they did and some years they felt like they didn't. In our experience, we're not seeing the weakness in the stalk that was talked about several years ago. So of the crowd that's here today, how many of you have tried BMR? How many are trying BMR? Oh, okay, okay. Well, we came up here about 5 years ago and toured around, and our feeling was that there was a lot in this area was being used. Linda could comment nutritionally as to what she feels like some of the advantages are. When I crunched the numbers looking at cost per acre on increase in seed cost and factored in a marginal yield drag, we felt like 2 to 3 pounds probably is somewhere our break even is on that. And I think, Shannon, what was y'all's research? Was you got 6 or 8 pounds increase in milk production?
Yeah, last year we did.
Okay. So, I mean, I think it's definitely, you know, the genetics are there to look at. I just think the high quality forage is such a key for us surviving in the industry that we are today. I used to say there was 2 really main things that I thought made dairies work was really good facilities so that people could work in them, and then really good trained labor to do those 2 things. But I've kind of added to my list, I think you've got to have quality forage in the market we're in today with the margins we are. So I think that's part of our challenge really in the Southeast is in certain areas, and maybe not just the Southeast, but certain areas of the country, is what does it really cost to generate forage and the good forage. A healthy rumen is such an important part. We still monitor cows that we have to cull due to what we call upset stomachs, those cows that just don't respond. You know, we went through the thing several years ago. I think it was more of an industry deal with hemorrhagic bowel syndrome or bloody gut, in my experience, and in our herd and our practice. That's a lot better than it used to be, so I think we've learned more about feeding the rumen. Better forages are part of that, and so that's a big part of profitability as well. And then employee training, I told you a little bit about our monthly meetings and some of the things that I say that I have to say the same thing over and over again. But I think that's just part of it. I think most of our wives would tell us that, right? Okay. Okay. Amy says more than 11 times. For us, with like if a new guy is training to milk, we really like those dairy coach videos. There's about 6 of them. We want them to watch all those. We try to get them to understand the why of what you're doing, not just that we want you to do, but why we want you to do it, the cost factor in it, what's important about it, and but it does take a lot of going over it. We've really gotten in our meetings, at every meeting, we try to document what was talked about. Everybody signs off that they were at the meeting. We put it in a file, really try to make safety training a big part of every meeting. You know, some of these injuries on the farm are so catastrophic, can really be devastating to the people, obviously, and their family. It can be devastating economically to the farm if you have one of those. I did find a really good one online the other day. It's like a 50-page online dairy safety manual. It goes through all the examples of dealing with silage safety, equipment safety, cow safety, gives examples. And I've got a lady that works for me who's going to translate that into Spanish to try to make sure at each meeting we make that part of our monthly meeting. And I just wanted to bring up the book, Good to Great. I think it's good for us sometimes to read. You know, I do a little work in some of the local schools, and I always tell the kids that when you look at the habits of highly successful people, most of those lists you read, it's usually reading. And I see a lot of kids that don't do a lot of reading, but I would encourage you maybe to read something other than just a dairy magazine or a dairy book. So this is a business management book. They also did the one, Great by Choice. I really like that book as well. And they're really looking at a group of different businesses that were highly successful and what they did in those businesses and what their CEOs mentality was to make those businesses great. And I think so. I'm a business with 24 or 5 employees. They're talking about guys with 30,000 to 100,000 employees, but I think the principles are still the same. The way we deal with people, the way we train people, the way we take attention to detail in the things that we do. So I felt like that's helpful to me. I go back and review some things there every now and then, especially here lately, do a lot more reviewing of things now and then. And then I actually saw this at a milk plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Whatever we did today, we can do better tomorrow. And so I think that's where our industry is going to be, and the ones of us that are going to make it and are going to survive through these times, we have to look at it every day. What can we do a little bit better? And so I think that's the last slide there, Shannon. A special thanks to Dairy Advantage and Extension and helping us put this together, and the effort that went into it. And I hope you got something out of it today that was useful and you can take back to your farm. Okay? And we can take any questions. I've got a team here that's happy to answer them for you. Okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Unsurprisingly, he did an excellent job talking about their farm. I'm sure you can see from the presentation why Rocky Creek has been an award-winning dairy farm in North Carolina. They've won all of our distinguished dairy farmer awards and everything at the state level. And then also Dr. Shelton's veterinary work has also was recognized just this summer by the American Association of Bovine Practitioners. He was given the Dairy Preventative Medicine Award, and so you can see that he does an excellent job in everything he does. And again, we want to thank the family and all of the employees and support team and everybody that's here to support this presentation. And also want to thank the sponsorship of NC Dairy Advantage as well as NC State Extension. I included on this slide both the website for Dairy Advantage as well as our new website for NC State Extension's Discover NC Dairy project. We've put together a series of 11 short videos on NC dairy farms, and it covers all the different aspects of, feeds and barns and dairy breeds and things like that. And it was actually a project that we produced for our dairy farmers in North Carolina to use when they've got school groups or different groups to go out and educate. And one of the things that we're really pushing as an industry in our state right now is dairy farmers aren't just selling milk to their co-op, they're selling it to a person, and that person wants to buy your product, or we want them to want to buy your product. And so having some of these educational tools to try to help connect you with your end consumer of your milk is more and more important. So feel free to download those videos and use them as you will. And we'll go ahead and take some questions. There we go.
I'm from the same county as Dr. Shelton. I've had the privilege of touring his farm maybe 20 times, something like that. One of the most interesting things that I've seen here recently is you implemented a piece of equipment to wash your sand. If you wanted to discuss that a bit, I think that would be interesting for the crowd.
Yeah, so we had the McClanahan separator there, and how many are familiar with those and how they work? McClanahan's, several of those. So like I said, in the summertime, our water that flushes that sand will clean it pretty well, but when we get in the wintertime, it's really nasty. But if you're not familiar with it, I'm sure they probably got a display here, but it's really a big hopper that you're taking that sand right out of the sand lane in. A little bit about our sand lane, we're probably recapturing about 85 to 90% of that sand to recycle that through the sand lane. And so in the hopper, they've actually got a little air compressor that's trying to keep that water stirred as a big auger slowly takes it up through there with some jets of water to push organic matter and manure out of that sand. So it really does clean it very well. Like I say, then the next phase is how to really get it drier. McClanahan has a shaker that you can put on the end of that where it discharges. That is a vibrating screen that I've got a couple of clients that put those in that seem to be pretty helpful in helping dry that sand a little bit more. All right. Oh, I got somebody going to ask me a hard question now.
I just want to know about the turnover rate. What kind of longevity do you have in your herd?
Okay, so when you that's kind of a lengthy subject there. So I think last year our cull rate was in the mid-40s. A lot of that was pushed by the fact that we were generating a lot of heifers. And so this is the discussion we have in the industry with a lot of clients is how many heifers do we really need? So last year we looked back, we generated 62 heifers a month. We really feel like probably 45 to 50 heifers a month is all we need to do because we were pushing cows out or generating 2-year-olds that we thought really didn't perform where they need to be, and that was part of it. So to go back to where I think we should be, and I think we can be, I think we can be 35 to 38%. I think that's about the number we feel is a good fit for us. We look at, an industry that just a matter of a few years ago, heifers were truly an asset. Today, those heifers have almost become more of any extra heifers have truly become a liability. So as part of that management, we've got 20% of the herd today is bred to Angus. I think that percent's probably going to go up. I talked to Ray Niebel out here yesterday, and they got some herds that they're using only sex semen and beef semen. It's just generate the heifers we need out of the very best cows we can. Try not to develop these other calves. We know that Holstein bull calves are getting to be worth less and less, and I don't know if that market's ever going to turn around. Ray told me, I think the number was that this year Select Sires has sold 250,000 units of beef semen so far to dairies. So my hope is that in another couple of years we're actually going to see this heifer inventory decrease a little bit. Hopefully that is part of the process in raising price. So does that cover where we are? Okay.
I'm just wondering if you feed waste milk to your calves prior to feeding this acidified milk replacer, and if you do you pasteurize it?
We start the calf. What we do with our waste milk is we feed it to those black Angus calves that are born. Okay. We had an issue a few years ago in feeding non-pasteurized waste milk that we got some pasturella, some mycoplasma issues going on. So no, what we start those calves on for the first week before they go to acidified is milk out of the tank. So it's whole milk. It is not pasteurized. I feel like we're monitoring mycoplasma and we're running a 2,000 to 3,000 standard plate count. I feel safe to do that for that first 3 or 4 days as we transition them to the acidified milk replacer. Most of the calves by a week old, we can have them fully on the acidified milk replacer. They start on that on a bottle for about the first 2 to 3 weeks, and then they transition to this group housing. Okay? Does that kind of answer that? Okay. One other thing I would say about the group housing. So I've got a client that has a very similar setup to this. They've continued to struggle with some respiratory issues. So I thought they did a pretty neat thing. They moved like we have the boxes with the 55-gallon barrel in it, they moved it outside. So they made a little grass paddock area for a couple of groups of calves, put their barrel and their milk outside, and 2 or 3 pens, and rotated it through there. Put some shade cloth up. In our moderate seasons of the year, it's been very good. I mean, you eliminate bedding, you eliminate cleaning. The air was cleaner, and they felt like it was a really big plus for them. So, we've started talking the engineering part of, you could put that thing on a little trailer so that you're moving, and then on TV they advertise the retractable awning. That would work perfect on there, right? So that or your shade cloth. But I think it kind of fits everything except the real rainy days, and maybe even with some wind breaks. I just don't know if those calves are going to come in in the real raw days. But I think for a lot of the moderate temperature times of the year or moderate temperature areas of the country, you could almost put this whole thing outside on grass. If you had it where you can rotate it a little bit so you're keeping really clean grass, the only challenge is in getting that 55 gallons of hot water to that barrel on a regular basis to mix your milk up. Anything else? Here's one. Oh, I got another one back there.
Have you considered automatic calf feeding, or you're quite happy with the system? Apparently, you're quite happy with what you have.
I'm really happy with this. It's really simple. It's really cheap to put in. Paul and Bill can tell you I'm not very mechanical, okay? And there's more things to break on that. There's very little on this to break, so no, I don't see us going to the more expensive systems. I think the benefit too with the acidification, the pH on that's about 4 1/4, so you're pretty acid. I think that's helping keep bacterial load down. The thing we found with it is if you want to mix that milk at about 90 to 95, if you get it hotter than that, they'll drink a little bit too much of it. But I think the acidification part of it has been a plus for us from a bacterial load standpoint. Okay. Okay.
How do you handle your genetics choice and how you're upgrading that kind of, incoming stock as far as what you're looking for in terms of traits and milk production? And do you also do any work with the development work that has been done by USDA, Dr. Norman, in terms of the genomics that have been developed for the bulls?
Okay. Bill, do you want to answer any of that? Not sure. Let Bill have the microphone. Bill is the better cow guy here, okay? He knows the genetics better than I do. He knows the cows. He works with the cows. He makes all the bull selections. So I'm gonna let Bill answer that question.
Well, we're all A2 to start with. We don't use anything that's not A2. And plus on fat, plus over 1,000 on milk, plus on protein, and plus on type. I don't worry about how tall they are because all y'all are worrying about it for me. We do some genomic testing, but we don't use it for as far as culling purposes or anything. It's basically on high-end animals. So, yeah, I don't know what else to tell you.
I think I would say on genomic testing, and we've had a lot of discussion about this at our place, and we've been to places that do all genomic testing. We've looked at it a lot in terms of like selecting the ones that we want to breed to sex semen versus the ones that we want to breed to Angus. I'll be honest with you, if Bill wasn't there for somebody to know the cows like he does, then that's probably what I would do. But when Bill's there and remembers the last 3 dams and what the problems were with them and how much milk they made, I think we've got a pretty good handle on where we are, okay? And back to the question on culling, when we went back and really looked at 2-year-olds that we culled, not mainly on production. This was what was bothering me. We're culling early lactation 2-year-olds on production. It's not because they were sick or they had health problems. It's because they just really didn't milk to fit where we needed to be. I mean, our really good 2-year-olds will hit 120 or 30. Then we got some that come in and milk 80 and 85. We need to quit that. But when Bill went back and looked through all those records, what we found was where their mama really wasn't very good either. Okay, so let's figure those out. That's probably what we were going to find, right? Let's not keep making those. Let's get those bred to Angus. We need her to calve one more time just to fill the hole in the barn, but let's not make any more of those. Okay, so I think genomics, from my perspective, gets better and better. It's obviously an incredible tool. I think the health data and the repro data is going to, of course, Jinx, you talk about what the cows of the future will be. It's going to be unbelievable. If they would ever open up a little more of the CRISPR technology and some of the things that are really out there, it'd be unreal what kind of cows there would be. Now, it might make milk get cheaper and cheaper, I don't know, if we don't figure out the better answer to that, but the potential for cows, I think, is unbelievable of how good they'll be. I think you had a question?
Just curious what your health program looks like, vaccinations, any testing like BVD, PEI, anything along those lines that you'd like to offer up?
Yeah, BVD is the disease we should be able to totally eradicate. You know, if we could go through and PI test everything, we could get rid of BVD. I really wish we had some national program to do that. So several years ago, we went through, I don't know if any of you are using the milk BVD test. It's a very effective test. You can take a milk sample out of your bulk tank. It goes to Cornell. They'll tell you if you've got any BVD, and you can do about 300 animals per sample. So we did that. We actually had bought some heifers. This was about 15 years ago. There was 2 out of about 70. By doing that test, we found out that we had a couple of PI animals there. We found those animals, got them culled. From that point on, everything that came in got a BVD PI test. So now I hope I never buy any more cows. I used to always want to go buy cows. I hope I never buy any more cows. Just because I think we're a lot better not buying cows, okay? I don't think we can buy cows much better than our good cows there. So that would be where we would be with BVD. With Yonis, we tested every dry cow for, what, 10 years, Bill? We had a few. The Yonis test is a little bit limiting in how specific and sensitive it is anyway, but I feel good with where we are on Yonis. If I was buying cows, I would definitely want to do the BVD test. I definitely want to do mastitis cultures to try to make sure you're not bringing in myco or Staph aureus. I think we're about as close to a Staph aureus negative as we can get. Now we found one last week which got her out of there, but a lot of our bulk tank samples, well, I guess until maybe 3 months ago, we were picking up 5 or 10 colonies of Staph aureus on our bulk tanks. I'm hoping when that cow left, we got rid of that, okay? As far as vaccination, I've got to where I try to give as little as possible during the lactation. About the only thing that goes in during the lactation is some lepto and an endovac. Other than that, all of our modified lives and all that stuff goes in the dry period. Our modified live, and I never liked that deal of giving it 3 or 4 weeks after calving when the cow's at a high level of stress and you're starting the whole thing over. So we moved that into the dry period, had no problems at all. So then our clostridials and all those others are all coming in the dry period. Pasturella, from what I can gather from a lot of parts of the country, Pasturella is not a really big, as much of a deal maybe in adult cattle as it is for us in the southeast. We have times in the southeast when that's a real issue. So we're still trying to get the bulk of that done in the dry period as well. Okay, does that kind of answer that?
Do you have any problems with anaplasmosis in your area?
Anaplasmosis has kind of raised its head a little bit more in the last few years. We had a herd east of us that had a lot of problems with anaplasmosis about 3 years ago. How it really happened that they happened to be the one that got plagued, I don't know. Really all across North Carolina we'll see it in beef herds. Fortunately, we have not had to deal with that. I know you go farther south. I know a lot of those Texas herds really deal with anaplasmosis. I haven't heard about it in Georgia and Florida, but it's an issue. Where are you from? Kansas, okay. Well, I know there was a herd in Iowa that several years ago dealt with some anaplasmosis, and so it is definitely one to deal with. I think the other thing there's a lot more research coming out on leukosis. My understanding is I guess a lot of Europe is leukosis negative. I heard that I talked with the guy, well, he's actually from Wisconsin. They're doing a lot of IVF work, and they do a lot of work with studs. So what I think they're trying to figure out now is there's some of these leukosis cows that are actually the super shedders. A small percent of those cows are really what's causing the major spread of leukosis. So they're looking at doing white cell counts on those cows and trying to determine the super shedders to see if they can eliminate the leukosis spread. So I think that's probably coming down the road as well. Yes?
I have a question. How do you maintain the rumen health?
I think, well, Linda, you want to talk about that? I'm going to let Linda address that some. She does our rations. I think quality forage, you know, I mean, I think I'm going to say a little bit, then I'm going to let you tell her. But I mean, to push to 100-pound tank average, you know, it takes a fair amount of starch. I think that is an advantage of the BMR, the high quality forage. The BMR that we just cut a month or so ago, I took green chop analysis on it coming in. We were 65 to 72 NDF 30. If you're familiar, not all labs do that. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about, the NDF 30? It's the neutral detergent fiber digestibility at 30 hours. Then they also do a undigested at 240 hours. You'll see those getting down under 5. So from a high quality forage standpoint is a lot of it. But then, you know, I never really wanted to do nutrition because the nutritionist gets blamed for everything. I mean, it's worse than being the veterinarian, okay? You know, they're not breeding, their feet are bad, they're not milking. It's always the nutritionist's fault, right? It comes from veterinarians, right? All the nutrition. So, but high quality forage is certainly the starting point. You know, we have some issues of still, I mean, it's a lot of the basics. Packing silage is huge. Trying to cut silage at the right moisture is not always easy, but it's a big deal. Those are things that make a big emphasis on the forage. Linda, I'll let you address a little bit more of just the health of the rumen to make the cow overall be able to perform.
Well, the biggest thing as a nutritionist that we try to do is make sure that we have proteins and starches balanced like we need to have them. And that's a really big deal because you got to remember you're feeding rumen bacteria. You're not feeding a cow. You're feeding rumen bacteria. So you've got to, anything you do to help increase the population of the rumen bacteria, you're going to help with the health of the cow. The biggest thing with the BMR silage that I've seen, and I'm a pretty good fan of it, anytime you get more digestible fiber in that rumen, because we're trying to fit everything in a small box, and we don't have so much room. So anytime you fit more products into that cow that she can actually digest, you're going to, and especially when it's fiber, you're going to improve the health of that rumen. So that's why the BMR has been so nice. It's a lot more forgiving with our weather, with drought and high heat. If you get it put up too dry, it's usually a better quality when it's dry versus a conventional silage. You can do a good job with conventional silage, there's no doubt, but it's not near as forgiving as the BMR. So having the BMR is kind of nice on that. But the big thing is, you know, you just really got to watch, make sure. Starch has been blamed for a lot of things that starch didn't do. Cow comfort, when you're talking about feet, it always goes back to cow comfort more so than starch. You know, starch has been blamed for foundering cows for years and causing these problems, and a lot of times it's due to cow comfort and cows standing too long, not using the free stalls, these kind of things. So anything you do like that to make that cow more comfortable, you feed her the best quality forages, and you get your proteins and starches balanced like they need to be so that they can work together, is going to improve that rumen significantly. So
I'd say a few things I'd follow up on that, and Linda's helped us with this. You know, sorting a lot of times is a big issue. Okay, so she's got us pushing these rations to 44% dry matter. So we're adding water to get to 44%. When we were probably typically before that more at 48, and she said go to 44, I thought, man, that's going to be pretty wet. I think it really helped us with sorting, okay? I think that was a big plus. I think push-ups are a huge deal. You go to farms that are not pushing up, you're not getting all the intake you can, you get more slug feeding. That's a big deal. The cow comfort for intake. David Green, when he was with Diamond V, he's now with Barton Kiefer, came through and they did a lot of studies on mixer wagons. We realized how many mixer wagons are not adequately doing the job because the sweep's worn out, the knives are worn out, the augers are worn out, you're running at the wrong PTO, there's speed, there's a whole list of things that you can come up with that influence the feed that you're actually putting out there. So all those, there's a myriad of things that come together in the whole feeding process to impact rumen health. Did that help answer that? Okay. Anything else? I appreciate you asking the questions. Makes you feel like at least you've got more than 10% maybe, you know.
I think that will wrap us up for this afternoon. Thank you so much for attending.